The wind that night bore more than dust, it bore tales. Ancient ones. Glacial ones. The stories that cried out for someone to finally hear them. Caleb Warwick braced himself in the doorway of his old ranch house. Sleeves pulled high, hands coarse with hay and with sweat. The sun had dipped behind the cottonwoods, pouring that golden quiet over the ground where even the birds, the men, and the regrets stood still. Amos, his aging cattle dog, leaned against his leg as Caleb scratched his ear. His eyes remained fixed on the horizon, regarding it as though it owed him a response. It never did. He lived by himself, not due to any tragedy, just because time had whittled life down to the stubborn and the sacred, and Caleb had somehow managed to become both. That was when he spotted them. 3 horsemen riding slow and purposeful, not concealing themselves but not hurrying either. Comanche. Leading them was a man whose face seemed chiseled by wind and winter. To his left were 2 women, one riding slightly ahead of the other, who looked sideways as if she was balancing the entire world in her mind. Caleb walked off the porch, but did not go for his rifle. The older man halted, his nod firm and unwavering. "I am Tacoma," he declared, his voice as rough as river rock. "These are my daughters, Sonia and Amora." Their names hung in the air, fragile yet unbreakable. "What brings you here?" Caleb asked. The chief climbed down, not with war face or warning, but as a man seeing another man who'd been alone for too long. His words were harsher than they needed to be. "We approach with an offer. You have no woman, no fire within. She," he gestured toward Sonia, "is willing if you are." The quiet afterward was almost sacred. Sonia didn't step closer, didn't smile. She just stood, her shoulders braced, her dark braid as thick as rope, eyes deep and guarded like worn leather. "I don't need charity," Caleb spoke softly. "It's not charity," Tacoma said. "It's choice." The wind picked up once more, and Caleb's fingers jerked about nothing. He nodded once, not in consent, but the sort a man gives when submitting to a question he never expected to. They departed in silence, setting up camp along the parched creek bed a few ridges east of where they'd parted. Their shadows dissolved in the gloaming, consumed by darkness. The following morning, Caleb found a tidy pile of kindling on the ground outside his porch. A folded piece of cloth sat on the railing. Amos sniffed it and wagged his tail. Caleb remained silent. By the 3rd morning, a satchel filled with ground corn materialized, its edge sewn with Comanche markings of waves and stars. He followed the stitches with his fingers, as if waiting for them to respond. Sonia never knocked, never tarried. At sunrise, she would stroll the fence line, deposit something, and disappear before he could discover the words to shatter her silence. Somehow, Caleb was shaving more frequently, wiping his shirt clean, opening the door a crack when before he would have locked it shut. These weren't confessions, but they were something. On one morning, Amora, the younger sister, remained behind. Mischievousness sparkled in her eyes, though her tone was flat. "She won't ask again, not because she's prideful, but because she's weary of begging silently." "I never said yes," Caleb replied. "You never said no." A still cold fell over the ranch that night, not biting, but creeping in unremarked. Caleb gazed at the dark hearth, the realization coming to him that he hadn't had a fire in days. Something within him was already warm. Out the window, he saw Sonia moving toward the ridge, moonlight touching the hem of her shawl. She did not look around. The following day, 3 wagons rode in from town. Neighbors. Men who'd once referred to Caleb as brother now looked at him as if he'd lost his senses. "They talking you in?" One sneered. "Didn't think you'd turn Comanche lover," the other sneered. Caleb didn't blink, just glared until their laughter faltered. They rode away, their dust lingering in the air like cowardice. Sonia had heard everything. She was standing behind the barn, head down but expression unyielding. That evening she didn't show up, and the next morning, neither was Amora. The ranch seemed to chill suddenly more than it ought to. Caleb attempted to get his chores done, but even the water was off-tasting, metallic, hollow. The sky was gray, as though it had forgotten how to be blue. He wished for her silence, wished for the way her hands, without ever coming to touch him, seemed to mend everything she left behind. At last, he made his way to their camp. Only Chief Tacoma lingered, sitting in the shadows, smoke rising from something sharp and bitter. "She won't come back unless you take her," the chief said. "I didn't do anything wrong." "No," Caleb said. "You didn't say anything. Sometimes, that's worse." Caleb walked away without another word, going home alone once again. That evening, the storm arrived. Not soft rain, but a howling, screaming gust that blew water sideways. Lightning ripped the sky in ragged scars. Caleb darted out to ensure the stables, and that's when he noticed it. Fire. Not lightning's illusion, but actual flames, leaping against the dark horizon in the way of the Comanche camp. He was astride the saddle before he even realized, mud spattering across his face and teeth as he rode full throttle. By the time he arrived at the camp, the tent had collapsed halfway, half wet, half burning. Sonia was pulling her father out of the flames as Amora wailed for assistance. Caleb jumped off his horse, pulling a beam off the frame, slashing through thick canvas until he came upon Sonia hunched over her sister, holding her shawl close. Her hair was wet, her face smudged with smoke, but she didn't cry. "You shouldn't have been out in a storm like this by yourself," he said to her. She looked at him. "I wasn't alone. You just hadn't arrived yet." He didn't reply, just wrapped his coat over her shoulders, his hands staying for a beat too long. They worked in the pelting rain together, repairing the tent. It wasn't great and it wasn't cozy, but it was cover. Under the mended canvas that night, they sat side by side while Chief Tacoma slept, his breathing shallow but regular. Sonia's voice was low. "They don't want me where you're from. I don't know if I even want me where I'm from." Caleb shifted toward her. "You're not a fire someone hands out. You're a fire someone earns." Her hand grazed his, not an offer but permission. He didn't kiss her, but he may as well have. The following morning, the sun came up heavy and golden. Caleb returned to the ranch and opened a small box. Within was a ring, his mother's. It had endured 2 wars and 1 tragic life. He brought it back to the camp. "I didn't say yes previously," Caleb said softly to Chief Tacoma, "because I didn't know what was being given to me. I do now." The chief looked at him, then nodded slowly once. Sonia came out of the trees, blotting her hands on Caleb's worn-out shawl, now mended with the same thread as the corn satchel she'd left behind on his porch years ago. She didn't smile, didn't ask. Caleb held out the ring. She didn't take it. She pulled his hand instead, slipping the ring onto her finger herself, and spoke one word. "Now." They stood there in silence. Amos barked once. A single explosion of happiness in the quiet. She stood on Caleb's porch that night, looking up as the moon rose over the distant ridge. Caleb emerged with 2 foamy mugs of coffee. They didn't toast, didn't say anything. They simply stood side by side. And from the quiet, something true started. Something no one else had to comprehend. Not all love is accompanied by noise. Some find us like spring snow, surprising, silent, and full of vitality. Perhaps it's not about finding the right one. Sometimes it's about seeing the quiet resilience in a person who continues to show up, despite the world telling them otherwise. If you're fortunate, you'll find out what Caleb did. A real flame never begs to be seen. It waits until you finally see its warmth. If this tale moved you, pass it along to someone who still has faith in slow love, quiet courage, and second chances. And tell us, have you ever known someone who made your silence warm with presence? Subscribe for more Wild West stories, not only of guns and grit, but of hearts, hope, and healing under the wide open sky.